I'm Karey. I'm a senior interaction designer at Zebra Technologies, or Zebra, in our London studio. That work? Yeah. So I want to take a minute and reiterate and reflect back on the theme. How will people interact with technology in the future, and how do we design for it today? Embedded within that is a question, or embedded within this question is a forecast of technology, but also a resulting response in a condition of design, or the methodologies that must exist to enable these technological futures. But I actually want to take this a step further and suggest additional layer to be regarded, that as designers, we should also consider the conditions in which we design. And by this I mean the environments, dialogues, and pursuits that enable designers to reflect upon the implications of technologies, our designs, and our participative role as both designer and user. And so today I want to talk about all three of these things by way of specific examples in both my professional and personal practice. It really to stress the importance of formulating your own forecast of our future interactions with technology, defining the corresponding opportunities and responsibilities embedded within your role as a designer, and most importantly, integrating time and space, which I think Gavin really emphasized, and reflecting on the implications of these interactions. And I call this talk Insights in Self-Centered Design, because self-centered design is my own personal, very much hypercritical practice in which I'm mediating technology, design, and reflection. So to start, forecast of technology. Not the, but a key catalyst transforming our interactions with technology in the future is the Internet of Things. And I'm sure we all, I'm going to make a safe assumption, are somewhat familiar with this term, but have a very diverse range of definitions and experiences. So I'm going to specifically talk about my experiences working in enterprise IoT. As I mentioned earlier, I work for Zebra Technologies. For those of you that don't know Zebra, we are primarily known for and specialize in data capture products. So from barcode printers and scanners to rugged mobile computers, but also maturing and emerging technology, all of which are about giving physical things a digital voice. But the technological transformation of enterprise IoT and the resulting challenges and opportunities are best explained by breaking down who are our users, what are their workflows, and where are their environments? Okay. So at Zebra, our users are what we refer to as situationally disabled, meaning they might be under extra cognitive stress or physically limited regarding how they receive and communicate vital information while simultaneously performing other tasks. And I think a medical scenario is a perfect example. Not only is there very important information that has to be accurately documented, but there also might be stressful relatives in the room as well. But Zebra, like a lot of other tech companies, is undergoing a paradigm shift in which the definition of a product is shifting from isolated hardware to integrated solutions enabled by the data the hardware collects. This also shifts our understanding as a user, which might not only be a person, but also a place or a thing, for example, an Amazon Kiva robot, as we now ask not necessarily who, but also what or where is our user. In this example, at a hospital in the Netherlands that we embedded with beaconing technology to track and measure door-to-balloon time of patients, it required thinking of the patient, the technology, and the hospital as a whole as users. Therefore, in enterprise IoT, our users are situationally disabled people, places, and things. And what is their intent? What are their workflows? So we have two distinct categories of workflows, frictionless and exception-based. A frictionless workflow implies that a specified user is focused on a particular task or sequence of tasks and any associated technology is implicitly assisting in the background. An exception-based workflow is when an error or a problem proactively transfers attention away from the original task at hand to exception handling, often engaging in technology in a much more explicit manner. So you could say we have situationally disabled people, places, and things transitioning between frictionless and exception-based workflows. And where do these workflows take place? Enterprise environments are often described as harsh, whether it's because of extreme environmental conditions, so they can be cold, noisy, exposed to the weather, which very much can contribute to those previously mentioned situational disabilities. But more importantly, they're very complex, with many layers of information that might be tangible, that might be augmented, and virtual. And I really love an example of an Amazon warehouse, which to me is the epitome of organized chaos. Because not only is every item in this warehouse embedded with many layers of information, but same or similar items are placed at certain proximities away from each other to prevent picking the wrong item. So I'd like to find grabbing a book off the bookshelf is not as easy as it seems. Which means we have situationally disabled people, places, and things transitioning between frictionless and exception-based workflows and complex data-rich environments, which pretty much is a WTF, right? That's not only a mouthful, that is a headful. But if we turn this into a non-enterprise specific design challenge and ask, how might we situationally enable people, places, and things transitioning between implicit and explicit interactions in complex data-rich environments, we have a more approachable and universal starting point relative to the Internet of Things. But as an interaction designer, what is my role in this challenge? What are the responsibilities of a designer? What is the condition or state of design as a discipline? And what does it mean for me within that condition to design these implicit and explicit interactions? Well, despite the ambiguity of who, what, or where is a user at Zebra, I design how people interact with, through, or without technology. A deliberately infinite and inclusive definition that ultimately focuses on people and prepositions, as the technology is optional, and it's relationships that I'm interested in. Because of relationships, space becomes place, or to paraphrase Paul Dorish, space referring to the physical and mechanical elements of environment, and place referring to the ways in which space becomes vested with social meaning. Because of relationships, appearance becomes presence, inviting action, participation, and dialogue, very much shown in this example project by the former Berg. But also by definition, interactions are reciprocal. So you could also say I design how technology interacts with, through, or without people. Again, this is another bit of a WTF. This is getting a bit abstract, especially considering technology is increasingly intangible, embedded, dynamic, synthetic, implicit. And I really love this implicit interaction framework by Wendy Ju of Stanford's Center for Design Research as a great reference to understand implicit interactions, those that are often behaving in the background, with explicit interactions, or those that demand our attention for direct engagement and manipulation. In her framework, she has 4 quadrants defined by 2 axes. So the vertical axis is attentional demand, and the horizontal axis is initiative. Meaning in the foreground, interactions demand the user's attention. In the background, they elude the user's attention. Interactions initiated by the user are reactive. Interactions initiated by the system are proactive. And when you populate the quadrants, it's very easy to see that the most explicit interactions, direct manipulation and command interfaces, are in the top left, and the most implicit, ambient agents, in the bottom right. But where the framework really becomes interesting is when we start to look at the transitions between quadrants. So in Wendy Ju's Writing and Talks, she gives a really great non-technological example of an interaction of a pedestrian and a doorman. So as you can see, a doorman is proactively waiting in the attentional periphery, in the background, in uniform. As a pedestrian approaches, the doorman proactively transfers to the foreground by explicitly putting his hand on the door handle. The pedestrian makes eye contact, signifying affirmation, and hence the doorman can react and therefore open the door. And to me, there's two aspects I really want to highlight in this sequence of interactions. And the first being the emphasis on how mundane it is. It's such a prolific example of the majority of the interactions in our lives. The second being that you could very easily replace either the doorman or the pedestrian with technology. And very quickly you have this choreography of people and technology interacting with, through, and without each other. And ultimately, this choreography, or transitioning between implicit and explicit interactions, would not be possible without first designing relationships. But in order to design new relationships or transform old relationships, we must first understand our existing relationships. And the condition in which I understand my existing relationships is a personal practice that I call self-centered design. And in this practice, I prototype playful, and I'm going to very strongly emphasize playful before I go into those, interventions into the mundane moments of my daily life to reflect upon my existing relationships with and without technology as both a designer and a participant. So I'm going to briefly go through 2 example projects and 3 resulting insights for each to convey my learnings. So the first project is called Burrito. There's absolutely no significance in the name, other than I found it funny, but Burrito is a bot intended to be a manifestation of a core relationship in my life, my marriage. Every time my husband and I message each other, the emojis we send are harvested in a database, and based on a mutually defined algorithm, Burrito tells us weekly who is a better spouse. Now, that is between he and I, so I will not tell you. But bonkers, I agree, so does my husband. But bear with me. The original idea of Burrito came about when it was suggested in a book that there's always 3 entities in a relationship. The 2 individuals themselves and the relationship itself. And for me, this is the epitome of something implicit that I wanted to make explicit. So I set up a really janky configuration using IFT, WordPress, and a bit of JavaScript to set Burrito in motion. And then recently, I switched from Messenger to Telegram so I could, quote, create a real bot, give Burrito a bit more credibility. And but immediately encountered a whole new array of problems, primarily due to a decrease in emojis and an increase in stickers and GIFs. And all of a sudden, how do I, or should I say, how does Burrito assign meaning and weight to this new medium? How does Burrito know that a sticker is directed at me or him versus someone we're talking about? How does Burrito know the overarching context that's taking place not just within this conversation, but also outside this conversation? And furthermore, what really drives me crazy is why isn't Telegram smart enough to flip the stickers relative to the appropriate participant? This project really started or instigated a critique of other conversational UIs. in a particular frustration with Messenger. So this is an example conversation with my sister. My sister has a 1-year-old baby and she works from home. I work in an open office space, or I'm at events like this in a very public atmosphere. So my sister is sending me voice memos, and I'm secretly trying to listen to them or message her back. And it's really frustrating. Why isn't Messenger smart enough to be aware of our individual context, of our periphery, so that the content is both appropriately sent and received? For example, why can't Messenger know when to show me transcripts of her audio and convert my messages into voice for her? So Burrito, as well as this critique on other projects, led me to ask the first of a few questions. What are the biases? Obviously, as the creator of algorithms, we have our own, but also there's biases embedded within the constraints of technology. And how do we, as designers, know what those are? And when do we expose them? And to what fidelity of legibility? For example, should Ben, my husband, and I know each other's rankings on emojis? But if we do, how does that then change our conversations? How does this change the interactions? What or who has agency? Who can intervene and when? Am I ultimately in control as the programmer? Or should Ben have the agency when it is too much? Is opting out even an option? No, it's not. And is the technology actually assisting us, or is it in control? I would argue that ultimately Burrito is control, because though we're not having a dialogue with Burrito, we're having a dialogue through Burrito, and thus we cannot defend or amend his or her ultimate judgment. What is the periphery? What is the immediate context? The concurring background of implicit interactions and information, though outside of our attention, has the ability to influence what is in our attention. And this really harks back to Messenger with my sister. So the second project I want to mention, and y'all already think I'm weird, but probably not as weird as Gavin, so that's okay, is Phygital Party Mode. So this is another exploration of relationships again, this time an Internet of Things exploration into my relationship with my website, but also how others interact with and through my website with me. It's currently disabled, but you can still find the old version, refactoring the code. Essentially, when you go to the bottom of my website, you can click a link and enter party mode. I'm not a sound designer. And my portfolio transforms into a musical instrument. There's also cat and patriot mode, which is a bit of an insight into my subconscious, but I'll leave that to your imaginations. But essentially, party mode inadvertently instigated a very unhealthy relationship with my website statistics. I was constantly curious of visitors' interactions and reactions, because for me, their appearance meant presence. I wanted to have a dialogue with them. So, again, much to my husband's dismay, I connected my portfolio to Arduino, or via Arduino to a Philips Hue and some piezo speakers in hopes of embodying a visitor's interactions with party mode in our flat. I got it working, much to my husband's dismay, and sent the prototype link to a bunch of friends, which ignited opened up a whole new array of questions. The first being, how does it scale? All of a sudden, as I went from one user to multiple, I had to manage multiple interactions simultaneously happening. And all of a sudden, it's now, can I create a band? Does it just have to be one instrument? Are there emerging patterns that can happen? But then also, do they know that they're interacting with each other? Do they know that I'm observing? What else? Where can I go with this? How does it fail? As I became accustomed to the interactions in my flat as an indication of my portfolio's health, when there are no interactions, what is that indicative of? Is that a failure of technology? Or is that a correlation between interest and user engagement? If it's the former, is there a backup? Like, do I need a backup if party mode goes down? Asking how it fails helps me define what is success. What is meaningful and important for each entity in this relationship? And how is it relevant? What is the appropriate time and place for these interactions to happen? If I'm not there, does party mode still play? What if my husband is there? How is there a different set of interactions? Is there a historical equivalent by which I can go and play back the day's melody? But does time impact the fidelity of playback? Or do just missed interactions remain invisible? And so when I look back at all these self-centered insights together, it's very clear to me, like most design insights, they aren't married to the specific project or the user. They're much more prevalent themes indicative of much larger trends in both technology and design. And while I might have come to these insights through a multitude of avenues, self-centered design not only enabled a faster path, but also provided a unique condition in which, as a designer, I can take responsibility for what could be the resulting choreography. And as a participant, I can reflect upon what should be the resulting choreography. So when we ask, how might we situationally enable people, places, and things transitioning between implicit and explicit interactions in complex data-rich environments, we can make responsive and responsible design decisions. Thank you. I have no idea how long that was.
That was perfect. That's how long it was. We have time for questions before coffee.
Do you have the digital web party mode case study or something online that you can bring to that?
In terms of like interacting with the site, there's a version available.
Tutorial or something, or what you did?
No, but I'm working on that. So I'm currently refactoring, because it's HTML5, now I'm building it with Google Polymer. So, but once I get that complete, I'll put all that code on GitHub.